The spiral exchange hung in orbit around a dying red giant, its ring-shaped superstructure glowing with thousands of lights. From a distance, it resembled a jeweled halo against the dark. Up close, it was noise, heat, and the unending shuffle of commerce. Marcus Hale leaned on a dented metal tray in the station commons, finishing a meal that barely deserved the name. The recycled stew was salty, the bread stale, but it was hot and cheap. After weeks running freight through dust-choked systems, it was enough. The air carried a dozen scents: ozone from the life support vents, spices from a Talaran vendor, the sharp ammonia tang of a reptilian species clustered in a corner. Conversations overlapped in languages both guttural and musical. Humans were scarce here, and Marcus knew every eye that glanced his way weighed him with suspicion. Humanity's place in the Concord was new, and few trusted them. He didn't care. After years as a soldier, he knew how to be invisible when he wanted to. He sat with his back to a wall, boots stretched out, eyes tracking movement like a habit he couldn't unlearn. A sharp voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. "Unpaid. By Concord law, you are forfeit." Marcus looked up. Two armored station guards loomed over a frail alien at the counter. The creature, thin-limbed, insectoid, with translucent skin stretched over fragile bones, clutched a half-empty bowl of soup. His trembling mandibles clicked in panic as he tried to explain himself, but the guards weren't listening. The commons shifted around them, but no one stepped in. Patrons kept eating, some stealing glances, others deliberately turning away. The old alien whimpered, voice barely audible. "Please. I thought I had enough credits. I will work." One guard snatched the bowl from his hands and hurled it against the wall. Broth splattered across the floor. "No credits. No meal. Law is clear." The second moved to grab the alien's thin arms. Their intent was obvious. Marcus had seen it before. Ejection. Out an airlock, or into the unpressurized service rings where no one lasted long. A bowl of soup, he thought grimly. That was the cost of a life here. His fork clattered onto the tray as he stood. He crossed the floor in steady strides, boots ringing against the deck. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. The guards glanced up as he reached the counter, their postures tightening at the sight of a human. Marcus dug into his belt pouch, thumbed out a set of chits, and slammed them down. His meals paid. The credits glowed green on the reader. More than enough. The first guard bristled, his armor plates clacking. "You obstruct station authority." "No," Marcus said evenly. "I paid his bill." The second guard leaned forward, visor gleaming. "The debtor must suffer consequence. Intervention is unlawful." Marcus didn't move, didn't raise his voice. "You've got your credits. That covers the soup, the bowl, and the air he's breathing. Unless you want to argue, he owes you more." A ripple ran through the watching crowd. Whispers passed in a dozen tongues. The old alien blinked up at Marcus, mandibles quivering. His fragile hands clutched at the edge of the counter as though it might anchor him against the tide about to sweep him away. The first guard's clawed hand hovered near his stun baton. "Human, you overstep." Marcus' gaze locked on his visor. "Or maybe I'm just the first one here to remember the point of a meal." The silence stretched. A server droid beeped nervously and withdrew behind the counter. Finally, the guard scooped up the credits and shoved them into the slot with unnecessary force. The reader chimed acceptance. "This weakness," the second muttered, voice low and bitter, "will stain your kind." Marcus leaned just close enough that only they could hear. "Funny thing about stains, they don't wash off easy." The guard stiffened but didn't strike. Not here, not in front of half the commons. They turned on their heels and marched away, armor clattering against the deck. Marcus exhaled slowly, tension easing from his shoulders. The old alien looked up at him, wide-eyed. You should not have done that." "Maybe not," Marcus admitted. He picked up the empty tray and set it aside. "But you were hungry." The alien's mandibles clicked in a sound Marcus guessed was gratitude. "My name is Talik. I owe you." "You owe me nothing," Marcus cut him off gently. "Eat when you can." That's enough. Talik's trembling slowed. He gave a halting bow, then scuttled away, clutching what remained of his dignity. Marcus watched him vanish into the crowd. The commons slowly returned to its rhythm, but something lingered in the air, a shift, a weight of eyes. Some looked at Marcus with disdain, others with curiosity. A few with something he couldn't name. He gathered his jacket, slung it over one shoulder, and walked back toward the docking bays. His boots echoed on the deck, each step measured, calm. Behind him, whispers spread. Marcus' boots echoed down the docking bay, a steady rhythm against the metal floor, when he noticed the first glances, sharp, curious, cautious. Merchants paused mid-step, cargo crates left unattended for a heartbeat. Whispers passed between alien species, low and urgent, fragments of words he couldn't parse. The human paid the worthless. Thinks he can change the law. He ignored it. Experience had taught him how quickly reputation spread in small corridors. Attention wasn't always welcome. Still, something prickled in his chest, a soldier's instinct telling him the ripple would reach higher, and not everyone would like what they saw. By the time he reached the stairwell to the upper concourse, a shadow fell across his path. Broad, rigid, imposing. Marcus looked up. Captain Vorthal. The reptilian figure was taller than most humans, scales glinting faintly under the overhead lights. His eyes, amber and vertical, narrowed as he studied Marcus. He radiated authority the way some aliens radiated heat, a natural dominance, impossible to ignore. Around his armored frame, the usual hum of station activity seemed to quiet, almost deferentially. "Human," Vorthal said, his voice low, edged with ice. "Step aside." Marcus held his ground. "Do you want me to step aside, or do you want a reason?" Vorthal's tail lashed once, sharp and deliberate. "You interfered in Concord law. You paid the debt of a weakling, a creature whose actions warrant removal. Why?" Marcus shrugged lightly, fingers brushing the edge of his jacket. "Because it was a meal. Because he was hungry. Because no law should make that a crime." The captain's jaw muscles twitched. "Humans equate kindness with strength. That is your folly. And yet it makes me act when others won't," Marcus said evenly. "I've seen soldiers left behind because following orders was easier than doing right. I'm not going to watch the same thing happen here." Vorthal's lips curled in a slow, tight smile. "Do you understand what you have done? The old alien is insignificant. The law is clear. Your actions disrupt order." Marcus leaned slightly closer. "Disrupting injustice isn't a crime. Only letting it happen is." A murmur passed through the concourse above, unnoticed by most aliens but perceptible to those trained to sense tension. Vorthal's gaze sharpened. He didn't flinch, didn't lash out, but his claws flexed against his armor. "You are lucky this is a public area," Vorthal said. "I might otherwise deal with you differently." "I'll remember your warning," Marcus replied, voice calm but carrying weight. "I hope you remember mine. Weakness isn't law, and cruelty isn't strength." The captain stared for a long moment, then turned on a heel, his armored form moving with deliberate precision. Guards flanking him shifted slightly, their visors catching the light. Behind him, whispers began to rise, carried by a dozen tongues. "Look at the human. He dares to speak to the captain. He paid for the worthless one." Marcus let them talk. He had no illusions about winning favor here. Vorthal would not forgive, not quietly. But the crowd's attention mattered more than the captain's pride. Small seeds were planted, and that mattered. He continued toward the freight lifts, the familiar mechanical clatter of the station a welcome distraction. He thought of the old alien, Talik, and the frail hands clutching the empty bowl. No law could erase the fear in those eyes. No rule could repair the humiliation. The memory stirred something deeper than morality. It was instinct, the same instinct that had kept him alive through firefights and ambushes. When the lift arrived, he stepped in and pressed the control to the docking bays. The doors slid shut, but the tension from the commons lingered in the air. He knew the captain had already sent reports, already dispatched surveillance drones. Nothing would happen immediately, But everything was set in motion. A soft chime sounded inside the lift, and the doors slid open again to a higher level. Merchants and passengers moved past without notice, but Marcus could sense the subtle glances, the quiet calculation. Stories of humans spread fast in places like this. One act could ignite whispers, and whispers could become influence. He paused at the railing overlooking the main atrium, watching the traffic below. A Talaran vendor waved, a small smile that was quickly masked by a professional facade. An insectoid child tugged at a parent's mandibles, peering at him with wide, curious eyes. He didn't know whether the fear or the fascination mattered more. A soft hum behind him made him turn. A small maintenance drone hovered, scanning the area. It lingered a moment longer than necessary, a reminder. Vorthal's reach was everywhere. No corner of the spiral exchange was beyond observation. Marcus straightened. He didn't flinch. He had never done well at hiding when danger was near, and he didn't intend to start now. He had made a choice, and choices had consequences. "Human," a voice hissed from a shadowed corridor, low and almost lost in the ambient hum. "The captain does not forget." Marcus didn't answer. He knew words here were often warnings, and threats were promises. He moved down the corridor, careful to keep to the walls, careful not to attract unnecessary attention. Yet part of him welcomed it. Life had always been measured in risk, and this was no different. He passed a hollow sign flashing advertisements for freighters, luxury cabins, and exotic foods. The colors reflected in his eyes, and for a moment he imagined leaving the spiral exchange entirely. Hyperspace jumps beyond the red giant, into systems where no one knew his name. Then he shook the thought away. Running was never the answer, not for him. Not when there was someone who needed someone else to stand beside them. Marcus Hale stepped off the freight lift into the lower docking bays. The hum of engines, the hiss of airlocks, and the metallic scrape of cargo trolleys created a constant, grounding rhythm. He should have felt relief at leaving the commons behind, but unease clung to him like static. The spiral exchange was alive with observation. The incident with Talek had not gone unnoticed. Signs of subtle retaliation greeted him immediately. A docking slot he had reserved weeks ago had been reassigned without explanation. His freight crate, left for inspection by station protocol, bore additional markings, delays and inspections flagged at multiple checkpoints. Even the automated payment terminals blinked uncertainly, rejecting transactions he normally executed without friction. He frowned. Vorthal's influence was more pervasive than Marcus had anticipated. Station bureaucracy was a tool as sharp as any weapon. Marcus strode toward his freighter, ears tuned to every sound. Shadows shifted along the walls, figures pausing briefly, glancing, and moving on. Alien whispers trailed behind him. The human interferes. A fool. Yet some admire him. He will learn the cost. The mixture of fear and curiosity was unmistakable. Marcus knew he had started something, and it would not go quietly. He reached his ship, a compact cargo freighter with scuffed hull plates and patched panels, a reflection of countless runs across hostile systems. As he began checking the systems, a sudden movement caught his eye. Talek, the frail insectoid, emerged from a side corridor. His translucent carapace shimmered under the dock lights, mandibles twitching nervously. He approached with hesitant steps, each one deliberate and cautious. "You," Talek began, his voice a low series of clicks and hums. "You did not have to intervene." Marcus waved him off gently. "I did. That's all. Are you okay?" Talek's limbs shook slightly. "I will survive, thanks to you. But the Concord, the station, they do not forgive." Marcus leaned against the hull of his freighter. "I know. And I'm not expecting forgiveness." The old alien paused, studying him as though trying to reconcile Marcus' calm confidence with the chaos his actions had caused. "I have lived long enough to see the law take what it wishes, leaving nothing behind. And you stand against it." Marcus offered a faint smile. "Sometimes standing is the only choice." Before more could be said, the clatter of heavy boots approached. 3 station guards stepped into the bay, eyes fixed on Marcus with unhidden malice. He knew they were here on orders. "Marcus Hale," the first hissed, claws flexing against armored gauntlets. "You are summoned to security. Interference with Concord law requires explanation." "I don't need an explanation," Marcus said, calm, voice carrying easily across the bay. "You want to detain me because you dislike what I did. I paid a meal. That's not a crime." The second guard advanced, stance deliberate, threatening. "All actions against station authority are crimes. You will accompany us." Marcus' hands fell to his sides, relaxed but ready. "I will accompany you. But I won't play your game of intimidation." The guards hesitated for a heartbeat. Marcus' eyes met theirs steadily, calm and unflinching. They had trained for intimidation and compliance. Humans were rare, unpredictable. He was the kind they weren't sure how to measure. He allowed himself to be escorted, moving with a soldier's precision. Talek trailed at a cautious distance, a silent observer, mandibles twitching in anxiety. The interrogation chamber was stark, metal walls, a single light overhead, and a low hum of life support systems. Vorthal waited inside, seated on a raised dais. His amber eyes locked on Marcus the moment the door slid open. "You do not understand the consequences of your actions," Vorthal said, voice low but sharp. "You interfere with law. You disrupt order. Humanity is under scrutiny in the Concord, and your defiance will not be forgotten." Marcus leaned against the wall, hands visible, calm. "I understand consequences. I've faced them before. I'm willing to face them again." Vorthal rose slowly, towering, claws flexing. "Compassion is a weakness your kind carries like a disease. In the Concord, weakness is punished. Are you aware of what your choice could cost you?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "I don't see it as a choice between survival and compassion. I see it as a choice between doing what's right and doing what's easy. I'll accept whatever comes from doing what's right." The captain's eyes narrowed. "You risk your freedom, perhaps your life, for a single alien's meal. Humans are arrogant in their ethics. And yet, that's what makes us human," Marcus replied evenly. "We act when others do not. That's what survives." A long silence followed, heavy with unspoken threats. Vorthal's claws flexed, the only outward sign of his agitation. Finally he spoke, voice low and deliberate. "You are released for now. But you are marked. Every move you make will be watched. This station will remember your defiance." Marcus nodded. "I expected nothing less." Released, he stepped back into the corridors, the weight of observation pressing down. Drones hummed overhead, security personnel lingered at vantage points, and Vorthal's influence stretched unseen across the station. Every action now carried scrutiny, every step calculated by watchers he couldn't see. Talek approached quietly. "You could have been detained. Or worse." Marcus shook his head. "No, I made the choice I had to make. Consequences are part of it. I can handle them." The old alien studied him with a mix of awe and confusion. "Your kind, you risk yourself for another. It is strange." Marcus shrugged, a soldier's simplicity in his gesture. "Strange? Maybe. But it's necessary. Some things are bigger than rules, bigger than laws." Talek paused, mandibles twitching. "You remind me of why life matters, even when law ignores it. Perhaps there is hope yet." Marcus allowed himself a faint smile. "Hope's cheap. But it's worth it when it saves someone." They moved together through the docking bay, Marcus inspecting his freighter, checking systems with the methodical care of a man who had seen too many failures. Outside, the station's hum carried on, indifferent yet alive, the whispers of a human's defiance already weaving into its stories. The spiral exchange was louder than usual. Banners of fractal light flickered across its vaulted ceilings, reflecting a simulated festival said to honor one of the Concord's ancient victories. To Marcus Hale, the celebration felt less like joy and more like camouflage, an elaborate distraction concealing sharpened teeth. He walked the main concourse with measured strides, eyes scanning the crowd. Traders bartered, patrol drones buzzed overhead, and clusters of Concord guards maintained their posts with rigid precision. Yet beneath the routine was an unmistakable tension. Heads turned as Marcus passed. Some stared with curiosity, others with resentment, but none with indifference. His earlier defiance had become a story too difficult to suppress. Talek had urged him to stay aboard his freighter. "The station is alive with whispers," the old alien had warned. "They prepare something. You are the subject." But Marcus had been a soldier long enough to recognize when retreat wasn't an option. If Vorthal intended to make a spectacle of him, better to meet it openly than hide in shadows. The trap revealed itself at the central square. A raised dais had been constructed overnight, flanked by metallic pylons and illuminated by stark white beams. Crowds pressed close, their murmurs blending into a restless hum. At the center stood Captain Vorthal, towering, armored in polished plates that gleamed under the artificial sun. His posture radiated confidence. "Bring him forward," Vorthal commanded. Station guards moved in unison, forming a corridor through the mass of bodies. Marcus was guided, not dragged, but firmly directed, toward the dais. He mounted the steps calmly, squaring his shoulders. The crowd hushed as Vorthal's voice rang out. This human interfered with Concord order. He disrupted sanctioned enforcement, challenging the foundation of law itself. Today, judgment is rendered before all. The statement carried weight, yet Marcus noticed something beneath the performance. Vorthal wasn't simply delivering punishment. He was sending a message, not just to Marcus but to every being watching. Fear was the weapon, and Marcus was the example. Vorthal gestured to Talek, who was dragged forward by guards. The insectoid trembled but did not resist. The captain's eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction. This one was spared from rightful consequence by human interference. Let all see what compassion delivers. Without order, weakness spreads. Without law, chaos devours. A guard raised an electrified staff above Talek. The insectoid flinched, clicking in fear. Marcus stepped forward. His voice carried, steady and clear. "Enough." The crowd stirred. Whispers rippled through the square. Vorthal turned sharply, amber eyes narrowing. "You dare interrupt again?" "I dare because you're wrong," Marcus said, meeting his gaze. "Law without justice isn't order, it's control. You're not protecting the station. You're feeding fear, feeding yourself." Gasps spread among the watchers. Such words against a captain were unheard of. Vorthal's claws flexed. Human arrogance. You believe your species holds wisdom the Concord does not? You are young, reckless, untempered by the weight of centuries. Marcus shook his head. No. Humanity is tempered by struggle. By survival. We've learned that strength isn't measured by how tightly you can grip others. It's measured by what you're willing to risk for someone else. The silence deepened. Even the drones paused mid-flight, recording every word. Vorthal's voice dropped, colder now. "You presume to lecture me? Then prove your conviction. Stand against me here, before all. If you prevail, perhaps your defiance has merit. If you fall, the lesson is clear." The crowd erupted with anticipation. A duel, not ceremonial, but raw, was being declared. For Vorthal, it was the perfect resolution. Public humiliation or death for the human, both outcomes cementing his authority. Marcus exhaled slowly, centering himself. He had faced worse odds on burned-out battlefields, but this fight carried weight beyond survival. It was symbolic, and symbols could echo louder than weapons. He stepped onto the open platform, stripping off his jacket, movements precise and unhurried. The scarred lines of his arms bore the story of past battles, each mark a testament to resilience. The murmurs grew. Vorthal advanced, claws extending with a metallic rasp. His bulk was immense, movements deceptively fast. "You will regret your defiance." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but not today." The duel began with a sudden strike. Vorthal lunged, claws slicing the air with brutal force. Marcus sidestepped, pivoting on instinct, years of combat training guiding him. The blow missed, striking sparks from the metal floor. The crowd roared. Marcus countered with a quick strike to Vorthal's side, not enough to wound but enough to test. The captain snarled, spinning with surprising agility, forcing Marcus back. The rhythm became clear. Vorthal fought with brute strength and intimidation, pressing hard with overwhelming force. Marcus relied on precision, economy of motion, never wasting energy. Each dodge and counter was calculated, conserving stamina while wearing down his opponent. "Is this all humanity offers?" Vorthal taunted, claws swiping inches from Marcus' chest. "Dodging like prey?" Marcus breathed evenly. "No. Humanity offers something you've forgotten. Endurance." The duel stretched on. Sweat dripped down Marcus' brow, but his movements remained sharp. Vorthal, for all his strength, began to show strain, slight hesitation in his swings, a fraction slower recovery. Marcus saw the opening. As Vorthal lunged, overextending, Marcus stepped inside the arc of the strike. He drove his fist into the captain's exposed throat, followed with a sharp elbow to the joint of his armored arm. Vorthal staggered, choking, claws flailing wide. The spiral exchange was never silent, but after the duel, the noise changed. Where once there had been idle chatter and the hum of commerce, now voices carried urgency. Marcus Hale's defiance had spread like fire through dry fields. Every corner of the station buzzed with retellings, some exaggerated, some whispered as if dangerous knowledge. Talek clung close to Marcus as they moved through the corridors, the insectoid's antennae twitching. "They talk of you as though you were more than flesh," he said. "A symbol. Even those who feared speaking yesterday find courage in your act." Marcus didn't answer at first. His body ached from the fight, every muscle was heavy. Yet he knew rest wouldn't come soon. Victory in the square hadn't ended the conflict, it had escalated it. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "Symbols cut both ways. They can inspire, or they can draw fire." Talek tilted his head. "Vorthal." Marcus nodded. "He won't forget what happened out there. His pride's in pieces. Men like him don't forgive." They entered the docking ring, the vast bay alive with ships departing under heavy escort. Concord patrols were thicker now, squads stationed at every gate. Marcus noticed the way their visors lingered on him, calculating, waiting. Inside the freighter's cabin, Marcus leaned on the console, staring out the viewport. The artificial stars beyond shimmered cold, distant, uncaring. He had won the fight but not the war. That much was certain. Talek moved nervously. "You could leave. Slip away before they tighten their hold. The story of what you did would still spread. You've already changed something here." Marcus shook his head. "If I run now, the Concord spins it. They'll say I struck in anger, then fled like a criminal. It would undo everything." The insectoid clicked in frustration. "Then what do you plan? You can't fight the Concord alone." A faint smile touched Marcus' mouth. "I don't plan to." Later, in the exchange's council chamber, delegates from the station's trade guilds gathered. They had summoned Marcus, not Vorthal. That alone revealed how deeply the duel had shifted perception. The hall was a blend of glass and metal, designed to intimidate with its scale. Marcus entered without hesitation, his footsteps echoing. Every eye followed him, some curious, some wary, some openly supportive. A guildmaster with copper-colored skin and heavy robes addressed him first. "Human, your defiance has unsettled the balance. The captain has ruled here for cycles. Now he limps in silence. The people murmur, and we cannot ignore it. What do you intend?" Marcus paused, then answered with deliberate clarity. "What I intend doesn't matter. What matters is what you're willing to allow. You've seen what fear breeds. You know how many have suffered under the weight of order. I can't tear the Concord down, but you can decide not to kneel so easily." The chamber filled with low voices. A reptilian delegate hissed. "You speak rebellion." "I speak responsibility," Marcus countered. "No system, human, alien, or otherwise, endures if it feeds only the strong. If you want peace, start by demanding justice. Demand it from the Concord, from Vorthal, from yourselves. The words were dangerous, but Marcus didn't flinch. He had no throne to claim, no power to secure. That honesty was precisely what made his voice harder to dismiss. When he left the chamber, Talek scurried beside him, clicking softly. You plant seeds you may never see grow. Marcus exhaled. That's enough. Vorthal struck that night. Marcus had expected it. Pride wounded as deeply as the captains could not be left to heal. The ambush came in the freight tunnels beneath the exchange. 6 armored soldiers, their movements crisp, their intention obvious. Captain sends regards, one hissed, activating a shock blade. Marcus' pulse quickened, but there was no hesitation. He moved like the soldier he had always been, using the narrow tunnel to limit their numbers. A strike to the throat, a sweep of the leg, a twist of an arm until bone cracked. It wasn't elegance, it was survival. 2 fell quickly. The others pressed harder. Marcus fought with brutal efficiency, every motion honed by memory of darker battlefields. He bled from a shallow cut on his side, but adrenaline kept him sharp. When the last soldier crumpled, Marcus stood panting in the dim light, hands trembling slightly. He knew more would come. Vorthal's rage was not exhausted. Talek appeared at the end of the corridor, eyes wide with terror. They'll never stop. Not until one of you is gone. Marcus wiped blood from his knuckles, his voice steady despite exhaustion. Then it ends tonight. The confrontation was inevitable. Marcus didn't wait for Vorthal to send another wave. He sought the captain directly, marching into the command deck where the towering figure brooded over a holo display. Guards moved to intercept, but Marcus' glare froze them in place. He wasn't hiding anymore. The station was already watching, listening. Vorthal turned slowly, amber eyes burning. You should have fled while you had the chance. I don't run, Marcus said. The captain rose, massive frame casting long shadows. Then you die here. They clashed with nothing held back. Vorthal was more savage than before, fighting not for spectacle but for vengeance. Marcus met him with raw determination, every strike fueled by the knowledge that this was no longer personal. It was decisive. The fight raged across the deck, crashing through consoles, scattering sparks. Marcus' ribs ached with each breath, his arms heavy, but he refused to fall. At last, he drove Vorthal into the reinforced glass, the impact shuttering the chamber. Pinned, the captain snarled. You think killing me will save them? The Concord will send 10 more in my place. Marcus pressed harder, voice hoarse but unyielding. Maybe. But every tyrant that falls shows the next one they can bleed. And the people here have seen enough. Vorthal lunged with one final surge of strength, but Marcus turned the motion against him, driving the captain to the floor with a bone-cracking impact. Silence followed, broken only by the ragged sound of their breathing. Marcus rose slowly. He didn't deliver the killing blow. Instead, he left Vorthal beaten, alive, and stripped of authority more completely than death could achieve. The guards who had once stood unwavering now hesitated, exchanging uncertain looks. None moved to aid their captain. Days later, Marcus prepared his freighter for departure. The station buzzed with new energy. Whispers had become conversations. Conversations had become plans. Change was no longer a distant dream. It had a spark to follow. Talek stood by the ramp, his antennae low. You're leaving. Marcus adjusted the controls, nodding. If I stay, I become the story instead of the lesson. This isn't about me. It never was. The insectoid's voice wavered. But if they come again. They will, Marcus interrupted gently. That's why they need to fight their own battles. I just showed them it's possible. Talek bowed his head, clicking softly. Then go with strength, human. You've left more behind than you realize. Marcus allowed himself a faint smile. Let's hope so. The freighter lifted, engines thrumming, carrying him away from the spiral exchange. The stars stretched before him, endless and indifferent. Yet somewhere behind, a station stirred awake, a people reconsidered their chains, and a captain nursed wounds deeper than flesh. Marcus Hale had not overthrown an MP.